Brennan Shaw had spent 3 winters avoiding the frozen lake where his father's unanswered call still haunted him. Then a German shepherd began sinking through black water, and after Brennan dragged him onto the ice, the trembling dog refused to face the shore. He stared toward an abandoned boathouse, where 3 faint knocks sounded behind a frozen door. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe. The late February sky hung low over Bemidji, Minnesota, and fresh snow had softened every hard line along the eastern shore of Lake Bemidji. From a distance, the frozen water looked clean and peaceful, a white road leading nowhere. Brennan Shaw knew that beauty could lie without speaking. At 45, the retired Navy SEAL still moved with the quiet economy of a man who disliked wasting breath, motion, or trust. He stood 6'2" in his winter boots, broad through the shoulders, with ash-brown hair cut short and silver beginning at both temples. A small scar rested beneath his jaw, pale against skin roughened by wind. Over a gray wool sweater he wore a Navy rescue coat, its cuffs scratched from years of ropes and metal clips. His father's old diving watch circled his left wrist. It had not kept perfect time in years, but Brennan had never taken it in for repair. Some broken things were easier to carry than fix. He followed the marked shoreline trail toward Pine Point, testing the packed snow with each step. The old boathouse stood beyond the trees on a rocky finger of land, close enough to reach from shore in summer, and nearly surrounded by ice in winter. Charles Shaw had built half of it, and repaired the other half so often that no one knew which boards were original. Brennan had inherited the place 3 years earlier. He had also inherited the final voicemail he never listened to. His phone had lit up at 9:17 that night. Dad, they had argued that afternoon about selling the boathouse. Charles wanted 1 more season. Brennan wanted to stop pouring money into a structure the lake was slowly eating. When the call came, Brennan watched the name glow until the screen went dark. He told himself he would answer in the morning, when anger had cooled and both men could pretend they had not said what they had said. Morning came. Charles did not. The doctor called it a massive heart attack. Quick. Probably nothing Brennan could have changed. The word probably had lived inside him ever since. Sharp as a fishhook, his phone vibrated now. Trent Hollis had sent another message about Saturday's Northwoods Veterans Memorial Fishing Day, coffee at 6. Bad stories at 6:15. You are expected by 6:30, which is the polite version of an order. Brennan slipped the phone back into his pocket without replying. Trent had been a friend of his father and considered boundaries an engineering defect. Brennan respected him. From a distance, wind moved through the bare birches with the dry hiss of paper rubbed between hands. The air smelled of pine pitch, snow, and the faint mineral scent that rose from cracks in lake ice. Brennan stopped near a red warning post and studied the surface. The afternoon temperature had climbed above the forecast. A thin skin of drifted snow hid the darker bands beneath. Then he heard the bark. It was small and broken in the middle. Brennan. Nothing moved along the shore. He waited, letting the wind settle around him. Somewhere beneath the lake, ice groaned with a deep sound like a door dragged across stone. The bark came again, farther out. 30 yards from the birches, a black opening interrupted the white. A young German shepherd fought inside it, front paws clawing at the rim before sliding back into dark water. His coat was black and copper-brown, plastered tight against a lean body. One ear stood, the other tipped outward. A faded orange training lead floated beside him like a dead ribbon. Brennan's pulse slowed. Training took over where fear wanted to run. He dropped his pack, pulled out a rescue belt, 2 ice-alls, a throw line, and a folded thermal blanket. He wrapped the anchor strap twice around the thickest birch he could reach and tested the buckle with his full weight. Solid. Then he clipped the tether to his belt and called Dana Whitcomb. East Shore, Pine Point Marker 7. He said when the rescue captain answered. 1 dog in the water, approximately 30 yards out. I'm anchored and making a prone approach. Send ice response and veterinary support. Brennan, wait for the team. He looked at the shepherd. The dog's chin struck the edge and slipped lower. He doesn't have the time. Dana exhaled once, the sound of someone saving an argument for later. Keep the line live. Talk to me. Brennan lowered himself onto his stomach. Cold pressed through his coat at once. He spread his knees, pushed one awl ahead, and tested the surface before every movement. The ice answered in little clicks. 10 feet, then 20. His breath made a pale cloud close to the snow. "Easy," he called. "Stay with me." The shepherd looked at him through amber eyes. There was no dramatic trust in them. Only exhaustion. Brennan pushed the throw line forward. The bright bag stopped near the dog's muzzle. "Take it?" The wet jaws opened but could not close. Brennan pulled the bag back and tried again. The same result. The animal was too weak to hold on. A hairline crack appeared beneath Brennan's left forearm and ran away with the whisper of torn cloth. He froze. The lake shifted below his chest. Dana's voice sharpened through the earpiece. "Back 2 feet. Now." The shepherd's nose dipped under. His eyes remained above the surface for half a second. Brennan saw a phone glowing in a dark room. He heard every reasonable promise contained in the word tomorrow. "Not this time," he whispered. He drove the right awl into firmer ice and slid forward. The surface broke beneath his left shoulder. Water flooded his sleeve, so cold it felt hot at first, a bright shock biting to the bone. His body tried to gasp. He locked his jaw, kept his chest low, and caught the shepherd's orange lead. The line pulled taut behind him. The birch held. Brennan looped the rescue strap beneath the dog's front legs. The shepherd gave one weak kick. Together, inch by inch, they rose against the broken rim. Ice crumbled under Brennan's elbow. He rolled backward, dragging the dog across his chest, then kept rolling until the surface stopped trembling. On shore, Brennan tore open the thermal blanket and wrapped the shepherd against the dry wool beneath his coat. The dog's heartbeat fluttered fast and thin. Brennan rubbed warmth into the animal's chest, speaking without knowing what he said. The German shepherd finally coughed, shivered once, and opened his amber eyes. "There you are," Brennan murmured. The dog did not look at him. He did not look toward the warm truck trail or the approaching flash of rescue lights through the trees. His head turned toward Pine Point, toward the old boathouse. One ear lifted, the other leaned outward. Across the snow came 3 faint sounds. Knock, a long pause, knock, knock. Someone was inside. Snow thickened over Pine Point, and the old boathouse stood behind a gray veil at the edge of Lake Bemidji. Rescue lights flickered through the birches on shore, but the 3 knocks came from the opposite direction, weak and uneven beneath the wind. Brennan pressed 2 fingers against the German shepherd's neck. The pulse remained quick, but it was stronger than before. The dog trembled beneath the thermal blanket, a response Brennan welcomed. Shivering meant the body had not surrendered. "Dana, did you hear that?" Static cracked in his earpiece. "Hear what?" The wind fell for a moment. "Knock!" "Boathouse," Brennan said. "Possible trapped person. Team is 90 seconds out. Do not cross the open shelf." Brennan studied the route. The direct line from the rescue hole to Pine Point passed over pale, wind-polished ice. Bad choice. Closer to shore, snow covered a narrow strip of older ice protected from the current by rocks and reeds. Still dangerous, but less so. He could reach the point by following the curve instead of cutting across. He opened the insulated compartment of his rescue pack, wrapped the shepherd in a second layer, and settled him inside with his head exposed. The dog watched his hands. Black covered most of the animal's back, while copper marked his legs and cheeks. Beneath his chin lay a small cream patch shaped like a drop of water. "You stay warm," Brennan said. "That's your assignment." The dog touched his cold nose to Brennan's wrist. Dana's voice arrived at once. "Your assignment is waiting. I heard you. Hearing and obeying continue to be different hobbies for you." Brennan almost smiled. "I'm moving along the marked shoreline route. No direct crossing. Keep the tether team coming." He clipped a longer line to the pack and began crawling toward Pine Point, probing each section with a rescue pole. The shepherd's weight rested between his shoulders, startlingly light. Every few yards, Brennan paused to listen. Twice the knocks came again. Each time, the dog's left ear tracked them before Brennan could identify the direction. The right ear turned late toward Empty Lake. The point rose only a few feet above the ice. Brennan reached the rocks and stood carefully, legs stiff with cold. His left sleeve had begun to freeze. Tiny crystals formed along the cuff and cracked when he bent his elbow. The boathouse door faced north. Snow had packed against it, and the swollen wood would not move. Brennan struck the frame with the heel of his hand. County Rescue. Call out. Something scraped inside, then a man's voice, thin but irritated. If you are selling insurance, your timing is poor. Brennan looked down at the dog. He's alive. Also difficult. The shepherd gave a faint huff that might have been agreement. Brennan moved to the side window. One pane was cracked, the lower sash warped shut. He used the metal end of the rescue pole to clear the glass, covered the sill with his folded outer shell, and climbed through. The smell inside struck first. Wet wood, old fuel, lake mud, and the copper edge of cold blood. A battery lantern lay on its side. Its beam crossed a cluttered floor and stopped at an elderly man pinned near the workbench. A heavy support timber had fallen diagonally across his left shin. Water covered part of the floor where ice had pushed through a broken foundation panel. One trouser leg was soaked to the knee. The man was tall, even seated, though age had folded him at the shoulders. White hair escaped beneath a mustard-knit cap. Metal-framed glasses sat crooked on a narrow face, and white eyebrows seemed determined to leave in separate directions. A wooden folding ruler remained clenched in one hand. "Leonard Harlan?" Brennan asked. "That depends on who is asking." Brennan Shaw. Recognition moved behind the pale blue eyes. "Charles's boy." Brennan did not correct the word boy. Men over 80 believed age granted certain liberties. The shepherd moved inside the pack. Leonard's expression changed. His ruler slipped against the floor. "Noble." The dog lifted his head. "He's alive," Brennan said. "Cold, exhausted, but alive." Leonard closed his eyes for 1 second. Relief left him older when it passed. "He heard the timber go," Leonard said. "Pulled free of the lead when the floor dropped. I thought he ran to shore. He went into the lake." Leonard opened his eyes again. Then he came back. The words held more than fact. Brennan checked the pinned leg. No obvious arterial bleeding. The boot was cold, but Leonard could move his toes. Brennan radioed the findings to Dana, then removed a compact mechanical jack and 2 hardwood wedges from the emergency cabinet. Leonard watched him place the base. "That beam carries the roof edge," the old engineer said. "Not anymore. If you lift too quickly, it will roll toward your hand." "Thank you." That sounded unfriendly. It was gratitude in a winter coat. Leonard gave a dry breath. Almost a laugh, Brennan raised the timber a fraction, slid in a wedge, reset the jack, and raised it again. His wet left hand had lost feeling. He worked by sight, not touch. Outside, voices approached along the shoreline, Dana directing the tether team. The roof groaned. Dust sifted from the rafters. "Now," Brennan said. He pulled Leonard backward by the shoulders. The old man's soaked trouser leg dragged free just as the jack shifted and the beam dropped onto the wedges with a violent crack. Noble barked once from the pack. Stronger now. Dana appeared at the broken window, compact and solid in a red rescue shell, black hair streaked with silver beneath her helmet. "I leave you alone for 4 minutes." It was closer to 7. That improves nothing. The team stabilized Leonard, wrapped his leg, and transferred him through the window onto a rescue sled. Brennan climbed out last. Snow struck his face in dry needles. Noble rested against his back, watching Leonard with one alert ear. As Dana secured the sled, Leonard caught Brennan's wrist. His grip was weak but urgent. "That hole," he said. "We'll investigate it. You don't understand. I measured that shelf 6 days ago. I signed the winter field assessment." His eyes moved past Brennan toward the white lake. "If my reports were right," Leonard whispered, "that hole should not exist." Night settled blue and hard over Bemidji, Minnesota, while snowplows cleared the road between Pine Point and the rescue station. At North Star Veterinary Clinic, warm air smelled of cedar disinfectant, wet wool, and coffee that had been forgotten on a burner. Dr. April Langley stood over the German shepherd beneath a warming blanket. She was 47, with dark blonde hair cut to her shoulders, red-framed glasses, and the calm hands of someone who had learned that panic rarely improved a diagnosis. She listened to the dog's lungs, checked his gums, and watched the monitor clipped to one front paw. "His temperature is coming up," she said. "No fractures. No signs of aspiration beyond what we can monitor here. He is exhausted and offended, which is encouraging." Brennan leaned against the wall with a heat pack wrapped around his left forearm. Dana had ordered him to the clinic after a paramedic declared his hand cold enough to qualify as county property. His wet coat hung near the door, dripping into a plastic tub. "He has a name," Brennan said. Noble, I know. April nodded through the open doorway. In the adjoining treatment room, Leonard sat on an exam bed with his leg braced, waiting for transport to Sanford Medical Center. He had refused the first ambulance because Noble had not yet opened his eyes. Dana had solved the dispute by informing Leonard that refusal forms required 12 pages and excellent handwriting. He had entered the ambulance willingly. Now he had been returned after imaging confirmed a severe bruise and a small stable fracture that did not require surgery. His mustard cap rested beside him. Without it, his thin white hair made him appear more fragile than his voice allowed. Noble opened his amber eyes when Leonard's cane tapped the floor. "Do not let him stand," April warned. Noble stood. His long legs shook beneath him. April reached for his harness, but the shepherd took 3 careful steps and pressed his head into Leonard's open hand. Leonard's fingers disappeared into the black fur behind the tilted right ear. "You disobedient instrument," he murmured. Noble closed his eyes. Brennan watched from the doorway. Something tightened beneath his ribs. The dog turned, found him, and took one uncertain step in his direction. Then he stopped between the 2 men and looked back at Leonard as if checking a count. April folded her arms. "That complicates everyone's paperwork." Leonard's mouth moved at one corner. Brennan crouched, but did not call Noble closer. The shepherd made his own decision. He lowered himself onto the blanket with one paw touching Leonard's boot and his nose pointed toward Brennan. "He was trained for hearing alerts," Leonard said. "Smoke alarms, timers, a person calling from another room. He understands hand signals and scent search." "Was?" Brennan asked. Leonard adjusted his glasses. The certification board found his directional response unreliable at higher frequencies. His right ear hears, but the brain does not always place the sound correctly. April looked over her glasses. "That is a technical way to say people decided. One imperfect skill canceled 12 excellent ones. I did not agree with the decision. You spent 6 months bringing him weather charts and illegal cheese biscuits. Your disagreement was documented. They were low sodium. They were shaped like cheese. Shape contains no sodium." Brennan looked down before either of them saw his smile. The clinic door opened. Dana entered carrying a clipboard under one arm and a yellow waterproof marker in her gloved hand. Behind her came Trent Hollis, 62, broad through the middle with a silver mustache and an old army bomber jacket that smelled faintly of wood smoke. He carried a thermos large enough to suppress a small fire. "Charles said your coffee could dissolve boat paint," Brennan told him. "Your father lacked gratitude and functional taste buds." Trent poured 4 cups anyway. April accepted one, smelled it and set it beyond the reach of medical equipment. Dana opened a map across the counter. "Pine Point is closed. Orange barriers go up before dawn. No one enters the boathouse or steps onto the adjacent ice until we complete thermal and structural surveys." Leonard nodded. "Reasonable. The memorial site is 2.8 miles southwest." Trent's joking expression disappeared. "That's separate ice." "Same lake," Dana said. "Same weather pattern. 26 people are scheduled to gather there Saturday morning." Leonard pulled his folding ruler from the canvas bag bed. "The event field was drilled 5 days ago. Average clear thickness exceeded 14 inches across the marked grid." "Who drilled it?" Dana asked. "I did, with Raymond Cole and Walter Gaines observing. Automated temperatures?" Leonard looked at the map instead of her. Dana waited. She had a silence that made most people wish for louder trouble. Trent cleared his throat. "We cannot cancel on a guess. Raymond hasn't gone anywhere except medical appointments since Louise died. He comes to this. So do men who won't enter a church, a support group, or a room containing the word feelings. Tell them they're fishing and they'll sit beside each other for 6 hours. "I understand what the day means," Dana said. "Meaning does not increase load capacity, then move us farther down. I need evidence before I move anyone anywhere." The outer door opened again, carrying in cold air and a woman with black curls tied low beneath a wool cap. Marisol Vega was 38. Slim and purposeful in a steel blue parka, amber safety glasses resting on her head. She worked for the city as an infrastructure engineer, responsible for pipes and drainage lines that became visible only when they failed. She placed a tablet beside Dana's map. "I pulled the maintenance records for the lake monitoring system." she said. Leonard's hand tightened around the ruler. Marisol brought up 3 red markers. The north temperature sensor stopped transmitting 20 months ago. The central unit began sending inconsistent readings 18 months ago. The south unit still reports surface conditions, but its submerged probe has failed calibration twice. Trent frowned. I thought replacements were approved. The request moved from Parks to Public Works, then to Emergency Management. It was deferred when the Highway 2 culvert collapsed. Dana looked at Leonard. I knew the instruments were unreliable. I increased manual inspections. That is not the same coverage. No, Marisol said gently. It isn't. A drill can tell us what happened at one point. It cannot show warm water moving under 6 inches of apparently solid ice 20 feet away. Silence spread through the clinic. Noble lifted his head, tracking voices with his left ear while the right tilted toward the empty hall. Dana capped her yellow marker. Until we know why Pine Point opened, she said, no one can tell me the memorial field is safe. On Marisol's tablet, the 3 failed sensors glowed red across the white shape of Lake Bemidji. Morning arrived clear and bitter over Bemidji, Minnesota, the kind of cold that made every exhaust cloud hang above the road. At the Beltrami County Ice Rescue Station, boots melted snow across the floor, while a wall heater clicked without convincing anyone it was useful. Dana Whitcomb stood at the head of a folding table. Without the helmet and rescue shell, she looked smaller than she had on the lake, but nothing about her invited underestimation. Silver threaded her black hair. Her yellow waterproof marker lay beside a map of Lake Bemidji like a warning device. Leonard sat in a wheelchair with his left leg braced and elevated. April had permitted him to attend on 3 conditions. No standing, no pretending coffee was medication, and no arguing that stubbornness counted as circulation. He had violated the 2nd condition within 7 minutes. Trent poured from his thermos. This is a memorial tradition. So was bloodletting, Dana said. Brennan remained near the window, wearing a dry field coat over a charcoal sweater. Feeling had returned to his left hand during the night, bringing with it a deep ache. He welcomed the pain. It meant the hand was still speaking. Marisol enlarged a map on the wall monitor. 3 broken sensors appeared as red circles. The Pine Point rescue hole sat to the northeast. The Veterans Memorial Fishing Day field lay nearly 3 miles southwest, marked by a blue rectangle. Manual samples at the event field averaged 14.3 inches, Leonard said. The lowest was 12.8. When? Dana asked. Monday afternoon. Air temperature? 9 degrees Fahrenheit, light northwest wind. Marisol nodded. Those are useful measurements. They are not a map of the water below. Leonard lifted his chin. I have studied this lake for 40 years. I know where the springs rise, where snow load insulates the surface, where current leaves the channel after a wet autumn. That knowledge matters, Marisol said. It also has limits. The old man's eyebrows drew together, ready for combat, but her tone offered no disrespect to push against. She displayed a cross-section of lake ice. A warm discharge can travel along a depression in the lake bed. The surface may refreeze overnight and look stable. A drill hole can pass through 12 inches here, while a person 10 feet away steps onto layered ice with water trapped between sheets. Experience tells us where to look. Instruments and repeated samples tell us what we cannot see. We need both. Trent rested both hands on the thermos. Saturday isn't only about fishing. No one believes it is, Brennan said. Trent turned toward him. Do you? The question landed harder than its volume. Trent opened a folder and slid out a typed list. Raymond Cole, 73. Has eaten most dinners standing at his kitchen counter since Louise died. Walter Gaines gave up his driver's license and needs 2 rides arranged to reach the lake. Paul Nystrom will not go to grief counseling, but he will sharpen everyone's hooks and complain about bait prices. 12 men on this list attend nothing else all winter. Leonard looked at the names. He knew them already. Your father was like that after your mother died, Trent told Brennan. He came because saying he needed company would have killed him from embarrassment. Brennan's jaw tightened. He liked fishing. Charles liked telling people he liked fishing. Half the time he forgot bait. For an instant, Brennan saw his father not as the blue-white light of a phone screen, but as a broad man in a red cap arriving without bait and carrying enough coffee for 8 people. The memory was warm. That made it dangerous. Dana pulled the conversation back to the map. We are not deciding whether these men need each other. They do. We are deciding whether they can gather on this ice. Today we survey. Thermal drone first. Radar along a tethered lane. Manual drilling from secured access points. No one enters the central field. And Saturday? Trent asked. We decide after evidence. The answers satisfied no one, which Brennan considered a sign of honesty. Before the survey, he drove Leonard to North Star Clinic. Noble lay in a recovery pen with the gate unlatched and a warming pad under his blanket. Dry, his bicolor coat had regained its fullness. The black saddle spread wide across his back. Copper fur brightened his legs, and the cream mark beneath his chin looked painted there by a careful thumb. April handed Brennan a leather glove. Yours? He checked his pockets. His right glove was missing. Noble opened one eye. The other glove rested beneath his chin. Evidence, April said. The patient is developing criminal intent. Brennan crouched. Give. Noble looked toward Leonard. He responds to reasonable compensation, Leonard said. You trained extortion. I trained negotiation. Brennan traded half a plain biscuit for the glove. Noble accepted the arrangement with the dignity of a union representative. That afternoon, floodlights and orange rope marked the survey area. The drone hummed over white ice while Marisol watched a thermal image on her tablet. 2 technicians pulled radar equipment along a narrow, tethered lane. Brennan managed the safety line from shore. Leonard observed from inside Dana's truck, his ruler across his lap. At first, the reading seemed ordinary. Thick ice, cold surface, a few insulated pockets beneath snowdrifts. Then Marisol enlarged a pale thread beneath the pine point shelf. There, she said. It vanished for 40 feet and reappeared closer to the memorial field. Another band curved beside it. They were only slightly warmer than surrounding ice. Not dramatic enough to announce open water, but distinct enough to demand explanation. Manual samples made the picture worse. One hole showed 15 inches of clear ice. 22 feet away, beneath the same smooth snow, the core came up layered and cloudy with a wet seam between 2 frozen sheets. The final drone pass occurred near sunset. On the monitor, pale curves extended under separated patches of snow toward the blue rectangle, marking Saturday's gathering. They looked like fingers reaching beneath the ice. By evening, clouds had gathered above Bemidji and floodlights painted the shore of Lake Bemidji a harsh white. Wind pushed loose snow across the survey ropes in thin ribbons, erasing footprints almost as soon as people made them. The results refused to become simple. Some parts of the memorial field held strong, clear ice. Others contained narrow bands of layered ice that appeared, vanished, and returned. The warm traces did not follow a straight pipe or familiar spring. They curved with old channels in the lake bed, invisible from above. Marisol crouched beside 3 labeled core samples. This one is reliable, she said, touching a clear cylinder. This one is not, and this one could carry 1 person until it doesn't. Dana looked at the white field. Can you define a safe boundary by morning? Not honestly. The county administrator called twice. Dana gave the same answer both times. She lacked enough evidence to approve the event and enough information to explain the full hazard. When the second call ended, she placed the radio on the truck hood with unusual care. Leonard's historical logs may show when the pattern began, Marisol said. Leonard had returned to North Star Clinic after the cold deepened. His injured leg had swollen, and April threatened to secure him to the exam bed with veterinary bandage if he continued treating pain as a character flaw. The canvas records bag recovered from the boathouse sat beside him. Inside were weather notebooks, hand-drawn maps, drill cards, photographs, and a small memory drive. Nothing looked sinister. It was the ordinary paper trail of a man who had kept watch after public systems stopped watching with him. Brennan entered carrying the latest thermal map. Leonard did not hear him. The old engineer had inserted the drive into a tablet and opened a field assessment dated the previous winter. At the bottom appeared his signature. No significant instability observed within the designated event zone. The cursor moved toward the delete icon. "What are you doing?" Brennan asked. Leonard's hand stopped. For once, no dry answer arrived to protect him. Brennan crossed the room. The report listed drill measurements, wind history, surface temperature, and visual inspection. It did not mention that the central and north sensors had already failed. It did not mention that the south probe was unreliable. You signed this after the instruments stopped working. Yes. Why were you deleting it? I was considering deletion. That distinction matters only to the hand on the screen. Leonard leaned back. Fatigue had tightened the skin around his eyes. I continued weekly field checks, more frequent drills, surface readings, snow load comparisons. You replaced a monitoring system with yourself. I filled a gap. You became the gap. The words struck. Leonard gripped the wooden ruler across his lap. 14 years ago, he said, the county installed a proper network, 3 current sensors, 6 temperature probes, seasonal calibration. Then a bridge washed out, a culvert failed, budgets moved. Each delayed repair was temporary. Together they lasted nearly 2 years. I was the only person checking this lake every week. Brennan heard pride, but beneath it lived fear. Leonard did not merely believe his work mattered. He believed the work would disappear the moment he admitted he could no longer perform all of it. The report should have stated the limits, Brennan said. I know. It didn't. I know that too. Then why? Leonard looked through the open doorway toward Noble's recovery pen. The shepherd slept with one large paw beyond the blanket. The first winter, the county discussed suspending permits. Trent brought me a list. The same list he showed today? An earlier one, longer. Men who had stopped answering calls, a widower who ate over the sink because setting a table for one felt absurd, a former mechanic who surrendered his license and rarely left his apartment. Raymond Cole, who came to the memorial 3 weeks after Louise's funeral because Trent told him someone needed help drilling holes. Leonard spoke each fact quietly. The event gave them a reason to prepare. They checked equipment, called for rides, argued about weather. For a few weeks each winter, someone expected them to arrive. And that justified hiding the truth? In my mind, it justified refusing to let a broken county system erase something keeping men alive. Choice requires the truth. Sometimes the truth removes the last thing a person has. No. Someone else removes it. The truth tells you what it costs. Leonard's pale eyes hardened. Old men spend half their lives being ordered into danger, and the other half being told they are too fragile to decide anything. They cannot decide if you hide the risk, and you believe fear should always vote first? Brennan stopped. Leonard continued. You stopped attending the memorial. You avoid the boathouse. Trent says you barely speak to the men who knew Charles. This is not about me. It became about you when you decided my mistake was simpler than your own. The clinic heater clicked off. Noble breathed softly in the next room. Leonard's voice lowered. What did you do with the truth about your father's last call? Brennan's hand moved toward the diving watch on his wrist. He remembered the exact light in the room, the phone vibrating against the table, the name he had loved and resented in equal measure. I saw it, he said. Leonard did not move. I knew it was him. I watched the phone ring until it stopped. The confession sounded small, almost ordinary. That was what made it unbearable. Dry snow whispered against the windows of North Star Veterinary Clinic, and the night beyond them had no moon. Inside, the stopped hatter left every small sound exposed. The wall clock, the refrigerator compressor. Noble's slow breathing from the recovery room. Brennan stood beside the counter with his hands loose at his sides. His father's diving watch ticked badly against his wrist. Losing seconds, no one could return. We argued, he said. He wanted to keep the boathouse. I wanted to sell it before the lake made the decision for us. He called at 9:17. I told myself we would both be calmer in the morning. Leonard lowered his eyes to the ruler. He died that night? Heart attack. Would answering have changed it? The doctor said, probably not. You do not believe the doctor. I believe him. Brennan looked toward the black window. I also believe my father died, thinking I did not want to hear his voice. Both things fit inside the same night. Leonard removed his glasses and polished them with the edge of his cardigan. The action gave his hands work while his face had none. You are angry because I believe there would be time to correct the report later, he said. Brennan said nothing. And you once believed there would be time to return a call in the morning. The comparison was unfair. It was also close enough to hurt. For 3 years, Brennan had carried anger that belonged partly to himself. He had trained it, fed it, and taught it to answer other names. Negligence, weakness, delay. Whenever someone made a mistake that resembled waiting, his anger arrived wearing a uniform and called itself judgment. "You should have written that the data was incomplete," he said. "Yes." "You should have forced the county to decide with the whole truth." "Yes, you were protecting yourself from being the man who ended the memorial." Leonard flinched. His fingers tightened around his glasses. "Yes," he said again. No defense followed. Brennan found no satisfaction in the surrender. The recovery gate creaked. Noble stood in the doorway, blanket hanging over his back. His legs were steadier now, though April had shaved a small patch of fur above one foreleg for the IV. He looked at Leonard when Brennan spoke, then turned toward the empty hall. His right ear had placed the voice incorrectly. "Noble," Leonard called. The left ear found him. The shepherd crossed the floor, set one paw on Leonard's slipper, and stretched until his head rested against Brennan's knee. The position looked uncomfortable. Noble did not care. April appeared behind him, red glasses low on her nose. "He gets 3 minutes. Then both of you stop exhausting my patient with unresolved masculine history." "We were discussing infrastructure," Leonard said. "Of course, men have hidden emotions inside public works since Rome." Brennan placed one hand behind Noble's left ear. The dog closed his eyes. Nothing was forgiven. The report remained wrong. Charles remained dead. Yet Noble's warm body created a narrow bridge across the room, and neither man wished to break it with careless words. April counted exactly 3 minutes before guiding Noble back to his blanket. The outer door opened at 10:14. Marisol entered carrying an archive box, her steel blue parka speckled with snow. Dana followed, still in her rescue shell, radio clipped high on one shoulder. "We found a possible source," Marisol said. She spread old utility plans across the treatment table. A property north of Pine Point had once operated as a commercial greenhouse complex. The city now used 2 of its buildings for a community greenhouse and winter food program. Beneath the site ran a groundwater circulation loop designed to keep irrigation lines and storage tanks from freezing. "The water is not hot," Marisol explained. "It only stays several degrees above lake temperature. The return line should feed a closed recovery trench here." Her finger traced a pipe toward the shore. "Last spring, heavy rain moved the slope. If the check valve cracked, pressurized groundwater could be escaping into old rock channels under the lake." Dana studied the drawing. "Enough to make an open hole?" "Near Pine Point, possibly. Farther away, it may only thin the ice from below or create layered pockets. That's more deceptive." "Does it reach the memorial field?" Brennan asked. "The thermal bands suggest it can. I need pump records to know when and how strongly." Leonard stared at the map. His folded ruler lay forgotten beside him. For decades, people had trusted the certainty in his voice. Now the truth required him to stand before those same people and describe the limits of everything he knew. "The association is meeting at 6, Dana said. "They want an answer." Leonard's jaw worked once. They deserve one. At 11, Marisol's phone chimed. A city technician had retrieved the greenhouse pump logs. She opened the file and scrolled through pressure cycles. The pumps increased output shortly before sunrise, then again when daytime temperature rose. The next high-pressure cycle would begin at 5:40 Saturday morning. The veterans were scheduled to step onto the ice at 6. Before sunrise, a pale wind moved across Bemidji, Minnesota, and the temperature climbed instead of falling. Lake Bemidji lay white beneath the growing light. Nothing on its surface warned that warmer water was beginning to move through channels below. Orange barriers stretched between steel posts at the memorial access point. Dana's county truck blocked the ramp. Beyond it, folding chairs, augers, tackle boxes, and fishing rods leaned against vehicles, while 26 veterans gathered in layers of wool and old service jackets. Some had driven more than an hour. Some had been awake since 3. All had expected coffee, complaints, and the familiar work of drilling into ice. Trent stood beside his thermos with his silver mustache stiff from frozen breath. "No one crosses the barrier until we finish talking." "Talking doesn't catch walleye," Walter Gaines called. "Neither do you, but tradition survives." A few men laughed. The sound carried little warmth. Brennan waited near the rescue truck with Noble beside him on a short leash. April had approved a brief visit on dry ground, provided the shepherd wore his rust-red warming coat, and remained away from the lake edge. Noble sat with one ear upright and the other tipped outward, solemn enough to be auditing the county. Leonard arrived in Trent's truck. He wore a camel wool coat over a dark cardigan, his left leg protected by a brace. He used a walker because April had hidden his cane. The old engineer moved slowly toward people who had trusted him for years. Conversation faded in waves. Before Leonard could speak, Marisol pulled up beside Dana. Fatigue darkened the skin beneath her eyes. She placed a tablet on the truck hood and opened the greenhouse pump records. The return system operates in cycles, she explained. Pressure rises before dawn and again when outside temperatures increase. Water only a few degrees warmer than the lake can escape through a damaged line and travel along rock depressions under the ice. Walter folded his arms. Does that mean the ice will break? I cannot say that it will. A bitter murmur moved through the group. Marisol enlarged the thermal map. I also cannot say that it will not. The ice is not uniformly weak. One drill hole can look excellent while a person 10 feet away steps onto a layered section. The morning pump cycle has already begun. Sunlight and concentrated weight will add stress. The lake remained flawless behind her. That made the warning harder, not easier. Visible danger required obedience. Invisible uncertainty required trust, and trust had already been damaged. Leonard moved to the barrier. He took off his cap. White hair lifted in the wind. I gave the association a positive field assessment last winter, he began. I knew the automated sensors were no longer reliable. No one interrupted. I continued manual drilling, surface temperature checks, snow comparisons, and visual inspection. Those methods have value. They did not replace the data we lost. Raymond Cole stood in the second row. At 73, he had the stooped shoulders of a tall man who had spent 2 years trying to occupy less space. A brown knit cap covered his gray hair. Since his wife Louise died, he had attended medical appointments and this gathering. Nothing else. You knew the readings were incomplete, he asked. Leonard faced him. Yes. The answer hurt more than an excuse might have. My report said no significant instability had been observed. Based on the points I measured, that statement was technically true. It was not the whole truth. Why? Someone called from the back. Leonard gripped the walker. Because I was afraid. Several men looked away. Fear was not a language they expected from Leonard Harlan. I believed that if I admitted our system could no longer support a confident assessment, the county would end this gathering. I knew some of you came because it was easier to say you wanted to fish than to say you needed company. I mistook preserving this day for protecting you. Walter removed one glove and rubbed his mouth. So you decided for us, yes. Trent's hand tightened around his coffee cup. Good intentions do not turn missing information into truth. No, Leonard said. No defense followed. No request for quick forgiveness. Do not step onto this ice based on my name. Not today. Possibly not for the rest of the season. The men stared toward rods and boxes they had prepared the night before. Walter had driven 90 minutes. Paul Nystrom had packed sandwiches for 6 people and claimed this was accidental. Raymond held an auger sharpened bright enough to catch the morning light. One by one, they put the equipment away. No vote was taken. No applause came. A man shut his tackle box. Another folded his chair. Walter placed his rod in the truck and closed the door harder than necessary. Someone poured Leonard coffee without speaking. Raymond stood beside Brennan and looked over the barrier. Louise used to say I loved the lake because it gave me something to complain about. She knew you well, Trent said. She did. Raymond's hands rested on the auger handle. If we lose the ice, what do we have left? Brennan looked across the parking lot. Paul had opened his lunch cooler despite the early hour and was passing sandwiches to men too disappointed to admit hunger. Walter stood beside Leonard without speaking. Trent moved from truck to truck, making sure no one drove away too angry or ashamed to accept a phone call later. The event had already begun, Brennan realized. Not the fishing, the part beneath it. Leonard lowered himself into a folding chair. The admission had drained him more than the rescue. Noble walked over on his short lead and rested his chin across the old man's good knee. Leonard touched the tilted ear. "You heard what I could not," he whispered. Brennan heard him. Noble had not discovered the failed sensors or the cracked valve. He had simply refused to stop signaling that something was wrong. The rest belonged to people willing to listen without demanding that the warning arrive perfectly. The question was not about fishing. 26 men waited beside a lake they could not enter, and Brennan realized stopping danger was only half a rescue. Morning sun broke weakly through thin cloud over Bemidji, while wind combed loose snow along the safe shoreline. The veterans remained in the parking area. Caught between anger and the long drive home, Brennan looked at Raymond's packed auger and remembered a wooden trough at a naval training base in Virginia. He had been 24 then, newly assigned, impatient with ceremony. Sailors carved names into small floats and placed them in moving water. Each float traveled the channel before being lifted out and arranged beneath a flag. Charles had attended that ceremony years later. He carved a name for a friend who never came home and watched the wood move as if the water itself carried memory. "We keep the water," Brennan said. Trent frowned. "The water is under the ice. That is our current difficulty. We pump a small amount through a closed trough on shore. Carve names into cedar floats. Let them travel the channel, collect them at the end. No one steps onto the lake." Raymond studied him. "That sounds symbolic. Most useful things do before people admit they like them." Trent's mouth twitched. "Your father would have stolen that line." Audrey Pike arrived at that moment in a deep plum coat, carrying a coffee urn with the help of 2 volunteers from Grace Harbor Church. At 69, she was slender, silver-haired, and patient in a way that made evasion tiring. A small lamp pendant rested at her collar. Trent explained Brennan's idea. "Closed loop," Audrey said. "Nothing carved or painted goes back into the lake." Marisol nodded. "Public Works has a portable wash channel and collection tank. I can add a screened intake and filter." Dana was already on the radio. 2 shelters, folding tables, portable pump. Keep every hose behind the barrier. Who can carve? Trent called. 17 hands rose. Who can spell? 9 remained, more than expected. We proceed. The parking area changed over the next 2 hours. Public Works delivered a long metal channel. Marisol adjusted its slope and tested the return tank. Dana's team raised shelters against the wind. Audrey organized soup, crackers, blankets, and name cards. Trent distributed blocks of cedar from the church workshop. Men who had arrived ready to drill holes now sanded wood with old gloves. They carved names of soldiers, wives, brothers, friends, and neighbors. Some worked in silence. Others argued over letter spacing as though national security depended on it. Leonard sat beside a table, his braced leg extended. He did not direct the work. That restraint cost him more than anyone noticed. Walter approached, carrying 2 cups. "I'm still angry. Reasonable," Leonard said. "I also brought coffee. Those conditions can coexist." Walter handed him a cup. It was not forgiveness, it was company. April arrived with Noble after checking his temperature and lungs. The young shepherd wore his warming coat and remained clipped to a waist lead on dry pavement. She addressed the group. "Noble is not equipment. He does not carry tools. Inspect ice, improve morale on command, or consume anything Trent calls stew." "It's soup," Trent protested. "Its legal status remains under review." Noble sat beside Leonard until Walter left a leather glove on his chair. The shepherd rose, took it carefully, and carried it beneath the coffee table. Walter crouched. "That cost $40. Noble rested his chin on it. "Does he negotiate?" "Only in poultry," Leonard said. Half a cracker changed ownership. The glove was returned damp but intact. Laughter moved through the shelter, small at first, then easier. The first cedar float carried the name Louise Cole. Raymond held it in both hands. His thumb traced the letters before he placed it into the channel. Water caught the wood, turned it once, and carried it slowly beneath the shelter. At the far end, Audrey lifted it out and set it on a wooden frame Brennan had built. Raymond did not cry. His shoulders simply lowered, as though he had been holding a weight no one else could see. More names followed. As Brennan worked, men began returning pieces of Charles to him. Paul remembered Charles singing the wrong verse of "How Great Thou Art" with such confidence that half the church followed him. Walter said Charles once repaired a reel with a kitchen fork because walking back to the house for a screwdriver offended his principles. Trent told the story of the lost tackle box. He dropped it through the ice, Trent said, then blamed an eagle. There was no eagle, Brennan replied. Large bird. Excellent grip strength. You were his witness. I was his friend. Different oath. Brennan laughed before he could stop himself. The sound startled him. For years he had treated grief like a sealed container, afraid laughter would let the last of his father escape. Instead, each story brought Charles back with coffee stains, bad hymns, and a missing screwdriver. By late afternoon, 34 floats filled the frame. One cedar block remained on the table. Before Brennan picked it up, Audrey brought him soup in a paper cup. You have repaired a pump, built a frame, and eaten half a cracker. Even faith requires calories. Across the shelter, Raymond sat beside Louise's float. He told Paul that Louise had hated fishing but loved the quiet drive home. When Raymond finally spoke about people he missed, Walter sanded a float for an army medic who had once carried him from a damaged vehicle. None of the stories were speeches. They came in fragments while hands worked. Leonard asked Marisol to sit beside him and began drawing the old underwater channels from memory. Each time he offered a conclusion, he forced himself to add, "That needs confirmation." The phrase sounded awkward in his mouth. Marisol never praised him for it. She simply wrote the information down and asked the next question, treating humility as a working habit rather than a ceremony. Brennan picked up the final block. He held the carving knife above the clean wood. His father's name waited beneath his hand. Blue evening light settled over Bemidji, and the closed water channel murmured beneath the shelter like a narrow summer stream. Beyond the orange barrier, Lake Bemidji remained still, hiding every current under its white skin. Brennan sat alone at the end of the carving table. The cedar blocks smelled clean and sharp. Around him, veterans drank coffee, folded blankets, and read names from the completed floats. No one watched him directly. Trent had arranged that kindness without announcing it. Brennan pressed the knife tip into wood, Charles Shaw. The letters emerged slowly. His cold, stiffened left hand made the final W uneven. He almost corrected it, then remembered his father measuring boards with a carpenter's pencil behind one ear and cutting them a 1/4 inch short, while insisting the tape was defective. Beneath the name, Brennan carved smaller words, "Made coffee strong enough to repair engines." Trent leaned over his shoulder. Accurate, also disrespectful, he would approve. Brennan brushed cedar dust from the grooves. "Did the eagle really exist? Your father filed a detailed verbal report. He invented it. Memory is not a courtroom." Trent moved away before Brennan could answer. At the channel's beginning, Brennan lowered the float into moving water. It rocked against the metal side, corrected itself, and traveled beneath the shelter. Leonard watched from his chair. Noble lay between him and the channel, cream-marked chin resting on one paw. The float reached Raymond first. He touched 2 fingers to its edge without stopping it. Audrey waited at the far end and lifted it from the water. For 3 years, Brennan had imagined remembering required returning to the worst moment. The phone, the dark room, the silence after the ringing stopped. Now Charles moved through other hands, through bad jokes, through men who remembered his singing, through a piece of cedar carrying an insult about coffee. The dead had not become less sacred because they were funny. They had become alive again. Leonard called Trent over. The 2 men spoke quietly, but Brennan stood close enough to hear. "I made myself the final authority," Leonard said. "Not because anyone appointed me, because no one stopped me." Trent looked toward the darkening lake. "We trusted you. I encouraged that because being needed felt safer than being checked. I'm still angry. Walter has established that anger and coffee may coexist. Walter thinks beef jerky is a vegetable. His legal opinions are limited." Leonard's mouth moved faintly. Then the humor left. "Do you believe any of them will trust me again? Some will, some won't. Most will watch what you do next. How long? Longer than you want." Leonard nodded. The answer did not comfort him. It gave him a road. Noble rose and walked to Brennan. The shepherd leaned one shoulder against his knee, then looked back at Leonard. He still counted both men. The last name was read at sunset. 35 cedar floats stood on the frame. No one had stepped onto the ice. No one had driven home alone in anger. The cancelled fishing day had become less orderly than tradition and more honest than anyone planned. Raymond helped Audrey stack chairs. When she told him to leave the heavy ones, he said his back had survived the Marine Corps and 2 decades of marriage. Audrey replied that Lucia was no longer present to verify which had caused more damage. Raymond laughed. It was a rough sound, unused but real. 4 days later, city crews found the failed valve beneath a strip of frozen ground north of Pine Point. Spring rain had shifted the slope and cracked the housing. Each time the greenhouse pumps increased pressure, groundwater escaped into old rock channels under the lake. The temperature difference was small. The consequences were not. Crews isolated the line and installed temporary monitors. Marisol supervised from shore, marking every access point with orange tape. Dana's team remained on standby. Leonard watched through binoculars from inside a heated truck and offered advice only when asked. This nearly caused him physical pain. The preliminary report arrived 2 days later. It offered no convenient villain. One maintenance request had been delayed because a culvert failed. A sensor remained broken because the previous winter was mild. Responsibility moved between departments. Leonard's field report carried more confidence than the evidence deserved. Each choice appeared survivable alone. Together, they had nearly placed 26 people over compromised ice. Leonard read the report twice at North Star Clinic, while Noble slept beneath his chair. Then he took a sheet of paper and wrote his resignation from every lake monitoring activity in Beltrami County. Before signing, Leonard opened Noble's placement file. The certification notes described delayed directional response, inconsistent localization, and unsuitable performance. Not once did they mention the night the dog crossed broken ice to find help, or the way he kept 2 frightened men from turning pain into cruelty. Leonard did not tear up the report. Facts did not become kinder when destroyed. He wrote a note for April instead. Noble requires work that values alerting over direction, partnership over perfection. It was the kind of truth he should have written about the lake. At home, Brennan listened again to Charles's 7-second voicemail. Wind, a chair, his name. This time he did not search for a hidden final message. He let the recording be incomplete. Then he called Trent and asked whether the memorial frame needed another coat of sealant. It does now, Trent said, understanding the offer beneath the question. Leonard signed his resignation carefully. At the top of the page, he had written effective immediately. 2 mornings later, snow covered the streets of Bemidji in a thin, even layer, and North Star Veterinary Clinic smelled of antiseptic and overcooked coffee. Noble slept beneath Leonard's chair, while the old engineer folded his resignation into an envelope. Brennan stood across the room, reading the address Leonard had written to the county administrator. You planning to deliver that? That is the customary purpose of an addressed envelope. You could use it to level a table. Your father raised you with an alarming disrespect for stationery. Leonard sealed the flap. His left leg remained braced, but the swelling had fallen enough for April to permit a cane on level ground. He had chosen dark polished wood, as though even recovery required formal wear. I signed a report with certainty I did not possess, he said. A man who does that should not train others to sign reports. You corrected it publicly. After a dog fell through the ice and you caught me considering deletion. So your answer is to disappear? My answer is to remove an unreliable element from the system. Brennan pushed away from the counter. That sounds responsible because you put engineering words around surrender. Leonard's pale eyes sharpened. I was standing on the failed floor, exactly. Teach people where it failed. I doubt the county needs a seminar titled How One Old Man Mistook Devotion for Data. They probably do. Leonard tapped the envelope. Trust is not restored by competence. Competence includes knowing where you were wrong. A comforting definition created by people who were not endangered. No. A useful definition created by people tired of pretending experts never make mistakes. The clinic door opened before Leonard could respond. Dana entered carrying a clipboard and the yellow marker she treated as both office supply and weapon. Marisol followed with a tablet. Trent came last with 4 coffee cups balanced in a cardboard tray. The lids were designed by a hostile nation, he announced. Dana took the envelope from Leonard's hand. "That is addressed to the county," he said. She opened it, read 2 lines, and drew a yellow stripe through the first paragraph. "No, you cannot reject a resignation outside your department. I can make it inconvenient to submit." Marisol placed her tablet on the exam table. A new operational plan filled the screen. The county would replace all submerged temperature sensors and add 2 current meters. Manual samples would be logged by 2 trained observers. No field assessment would carry a single signature. Emergency access routes would receive independent review from Dana's rescue team. Trent would recruit shoreline volunteers to check warning posts, report changes, and make communication calls. Marisol would oversee infrastructure records so a broken sensor could no longer wander between departments without an owner. Leonard read the plan. Suspicion deepened with each page. "What part requires me?" "The 40 years of lake behavior not stored in any database," Marisol said. "Old channels, overflow patterns, snow conditions that hide surface water. Which coves respond first to a south wind?" That knowledge failed. Some of it did. Much of it did not. "I do not need you to declare the lake safe. I need you to teach us what to observe." Leonard looked at Dana. "And when I am wrong, someone checks you." Trent set a coffee beside him. "A revolutionary system called having friends. I have regrettably encountered it." Dana slid the operational plan closer. "You do not inspect alone. You do not approve alone. You do not edit submitted records. Every measurement gets logged twice." Leonard looked insulted. "That sounds designed for a child. Children are generally easier to supervise." Brennan watched the old resistance rise, the instinct to protect usefulness by protecting control. Then Noble woke beneath the chair and laid his cream-marked chin over Leonard's boot. For decades Leonard had worked alone because alone kept him necessary. The new plan asked something harder. It asked him to become replaceable without becoming irrelevant. "Who trains field observers?" he asked. "You do," Trent said. "Rescue procedure. Brennan teaches. Dana approves." Leonard turned to Marisol. New sensors must be compared with manual cores through the first full season already included. He adjusted his glasses. "Then the plan may be adequate." Dana folded his resignation and put it into her pocket. "Return that historical evidence of temporary foolishness." It was not absolution, it was structure. For Leonard, structure offered more mercy than easy forgiveness. 2 days later, the first volunteer training session was scheduled on the snow-covered bank. As they prepared to leave the clinic, April blocked the doorway with Noble's file in her hand. "One more matter," she said. "Noble is medically cleared. His placement agreement expires Friday." The shepherd looked from Leonard to Brennan. April placed Noble's medical summary beside the county plan. "His lungs are clear. Weight is stable. The shaved patch will grow back, though he may use it for sympathy until spring." Noble took Dana's yellow marker from the low edge of the table and carried it under Leonard's chair. Dana held out her hand. "County property." The shepherd looked away. "He respects jurisdiction selectively," Leonard said. Brennan traded 1 plain biscuit for the marker. Dana wiped it on Trent's sleeve before returning it to her pocket. The laughter softened the room but did not erase the question. Leonard's house had a fenced yard and routine. Brennan had youth and physical capacity, but left for rescue contracts. Neither arrangement alone answered Noble's whole future. April had spent 20 years watching people confuse love with a sufficient plan. She intended to require both. "He needs a legal home," she repeated. Cold sunshine spread across the shoreline training field in Bemidji, Minnesota, and the snow squeaked beneath 12 pairs of volunteer boots. Lake Bemidji remained beyond the barrier, beautiful, imperfect, and no longer trusted to explain itself. Brennan stood beside a coil of rescue rope. He demonstrated how to throw a weighted bag without stepping toward a victim, how to lie flat near uncertain ice, and how to keep distance between rescuers so one failure did not take everyone. "Your first tool is not courage," he told them. "It is distance. Your second is a rope. Courage comes later, preferably with supervision." Dana marked each procedure on a checklist. Marisol showed volunteers how to compare sensor graphs with wind, snow, and pump records. Leonard sat at a field table explaining why 12 inches in one hole said nothing certain about the next 10 feet. He corrected Trent 5 times before lunch. "4," Trent said. "Your count is the 6th. Dana recorded the correction. Leonard pretended not to be pleased. Noble wore a small olive canvas pack containing 2 lightweight marker flags and 1 spare pair of gloves. April had inspected the fit herself. "He carries less than some of you hide in your coat pockets," she told the volunteers. "No one adds tools because he looks willing." Noble did not look willing. He looked like a junior official expecting widespread incompetence. By noon, the volunteers called him inspector. Raymond Cole arrived early and stayed late. He learned the communication protocol, then volunteered to manage the call list. If someone missed a training session or failed to check in after a shoreline route, Raymond would phone them. If no one answered, he would contact Trent. "I am not good on telephones," Raymond said. "You called me twice last month about a snowblower," Trent replied. "That was machinery. Pretend we all have carburetors." Raymond accepted the assignment. For the first time since Louise died, someone expected him not merely to attend, but to notice who else was absent. After training, April gathered Brennan and Leonard in her office. Noble lay across both men's boots, making the seating arrangement less optional than it appeared. Leonard opened the discussion like an equipment transfer. "My house has a fenced yard. The shoreline station is 6 minutes away. My daily schedule is consistent." April folded her hands. "You want to adopt him. I am presenting relevant conditions. He brought you a glove, Leonard. This is love, not procurement." The old man looked down at Noble. "I am 81. Humor left the room. I could become ill. I could fall. I may die before he reaches middle age. He has already been moved from one training program to another. If I take him and disappear, he loses another home." Brennan understood. Leonard was not afraid Noble would burden him. He feared becoming another loss the dog had not chosen. "He should live with someone younger," Leonard said. "Agreed," Brennan replied. Noble lifted his head. April turned slowly. "You are 45, Brennan, not 19. I travel for rescue contracts. You work locally more than you admit. He needs stability. So do you." Brennan's jaw tightened. "This is about Noble." "No. This is about 2 men using a dog's future to disguise their fear of being loved in the present." Leonard frowned. "That diagnosis is unnecessarily theatrical. It is free. Be grateful." April opened a folder. She had prepared a guardianship plan. Leonard would become Noble's legal adopter and primary caregiver. Noble would live at his house near the shoreline station, with the fenced yard and regular volunteer traffic. Brennan would be named secondary guardian. If Leonard entered a hospital, needed extended care, or could no longer keep Noble safely, the dog would go directly to Brennan rather than return to placement. April would oversee veterinary care. Trent and Raymond had already agreed to walking support. Audrey's church fund would cover food or medical costs during any emergency. Leonard read the pages twice. "This has 6 contingencies. 8, you missed transportation. It resembles a logistics operation. It only looks complicated because you dislike needing people," Brennan said. Leonard glared at him. "You agreed with me 30 seconds ago." "I was wrong 30 seconds ago." Disturbing rate of change. On April's desk lay a cognac brown collar with a brass tag shaped like a water drop. Noble stood, took the collar gently, and placed it across Leonard's shoe. Then he crossed to Brennan and leaned against his knee while watching Leonard hold it. He did not choose between them. He did not understand why anyone expected him to. Leonard signed. At the line asking for reason for adoption, he wrote completion of long-term compatibility assessment. April read it. "This is surrender. It is documentations. Surrender with excellent penmanship." That evening, volunteers gathered at the shoreline station to celebrate the first training day. Brennan stood outside while Noble explored Leonard's fenced yard nearby. His phone vibrated. Raymond Cole glowed on the screen. The ringing continued. Brennan's thumb hovered above the green icon. His body reacted before thought. Shoulders tight, breath shallow, the old urge to wait until he possessed the right words. Charles's call had taught him that love was not always offered at a convenient hour or in a form that explained its importance. Through the window, Leonard fastened the new collar around Noble's neck. The brass water drop tag caught the light. Inside it, April had engraved "Listen with the heart." Noble shook once, then searched the room until he found Brennan outside. Raymond's name still glowed. He was not trapped beneath a beam. No alarm sounded. He might only need directions or company or permission to say he was having a difficult night. Small calls were easy to postpone because they did not look like emergencies until silence had finished its work. For one terrible second, Brennan was back in a dark room 3 years earlier, watching another name and believing morning was guaranteed. Night had settled cold and clear over Bemidji, Minnesota, and the lights of the shoreline station shone across packed snow. Brennan held the vibrating phone in his hand while Raymond Cole's name filled the screen. He answered before the next ring. Raymond. For several seconds, only breathing came through. I wasn't going to bother anyone, Raymond said at last. You called. That weakens your argument. A tired breath crossed the line. I got dressed for the gathering. Then I sat on the edge of the bed. Haven't moved much. Brennan looked through the station window. Trent was pouring coffee. Dana was correcting a volunteer's rope coil. Leonard sat beside Noble with the new collar in his lap. Audrey unpacked a pan of cinnamon rolls no one had authorized but everyone intended to protect. Coffee is still hot, Brennan said. Trent is repeating himself. How can you tell? His mouth is moving. Noble has begun stealing county gloves. Leonard is calling it inventory control. Raymond laughed. Weak but real. Brennan waited. I suppose I could put my coat on, Raymond said. Recommended in February. You don't need to supervise me. I know. The answer silenced Raymond for a moment. Call me when you reach the truck, Brennan said. All right. Brennan stayed on the line while Raymond found his keys, complained about one boot, and walked through the house. No grand speech passed between them. No miracle announced itself. A lonely man crossed a kitchen because someone remained at the other end of an ordinary call. Healing began there, small, almost invisible. The following months changed the shoreline by patient degrees. Leonard trained volunteers but never inspected alone. Marisol installed replacement sensors and made every department sign ownership of its maintenance schedule. Dana reviewed access routes. Raymond called anyone who missed a check-in and discovered he was better on telephones than he claimed. Noble settled into Leonard's house as if he had always known its rooms. Each morning he carried lightweight flags along the fixed shoreline path. He never stepped onto lake ice. When Leonard recorded conditions, Noble sat beside the warning post with the grave expression of a government employee expecting fraud. He also stole gloves. 7 mismatched pairs appeared behind the coffee bin in March. Leonard called it supply quality testing. Brennan called it theft. Trent called it the first county program with measurable results. By the next winter, the Pine Point boathouse no longer stood. Spring runoff had loosened the damaged supports, and the county declared the structure unsafe. Leonard objected to the word until Marisol made him document exactly why it was correct. Usable boards were removed before the water rose. They dried through summer and became roof beams and interior paneling for the new Lake Bemidji safety station on the east shore. One scarred plank bore a deep knife line Charles had cut while cleaning a fish with more enthusiasm than control. At first, Brennan wanted that board hidden. Then he changed his mind. A scar did not make wood useless. Sometimes it proved the material had remained in service. The new station was not large. A covered porch faced the lake. Inside stood monitoring screens, rescue ropes, thermal blankets, first aid supplies, battery radios, and enough mismatched mugs to suggest every kitchen in Bemidji had donated one it no longer wanted. 2 armchairs sat beneath a handwritten sign. Sitting down is not a medical failure, April admitted writing it. She refused to reveal the first draft. Outside the entrance hung a bronze bell paid for by Grace Harbor Church. Around its lower rim were engraved the words, "No call is too small to answer." The dedication took place on the first clear Saturday of December. Snow lay lightly over the shore, and the lake moved dark between shelves of new ice. No one crossed the barrier. The memorial gathering had been permanently redesigned around the closed water channel under the station awning. Leonard sat beside the monitoring table in a cream fisherman's sweater and forest green vest. His leg had healed, though he used the cane on uneven ground. 2 younger volunteers compared manual observations with sensor data. Leonard listened to their conclusions before offering his own. That change had taken longer than the bone. At nearly 2 years old, Noble had grown into his oversized paws. His black saddle remained broad, the cream drop beneath his chin brighter against his dark muzzle. One ear stood straight, the other leaned outward, giving him the permanent look of a dog who had heard the rules and found several questionable. His hearing had not become perfect. His life had become whole. Brennan arrived carrying a narrow wooden display case. More silver showed at his temples. He mounted the case beside the cedar memorial floats. Inside, he placed Charles's old diving watch. The scratched face still lost seconds. Beneath it, he added a card, Charles Shaw, lost one tackle box. Blame it an eagle, without legal representation. Trent read it. The eagle existed. You were not there. I received testimony from a reliable witness. My father was the witness. Reliable enough. Laughter moved through the station. Brennan smiled with it. A year earlier, the sound might have felt disloyal. Now he knew grief was not a sealed room. Opening the door did not release the dead. It let their stories return. Raymond arrived carrying a plate of waffles wrapped in foil. He had become keeper of the call list and treated the position with military seriousness. He still had difficult mornings. On those mornings, he called before silence grew too heavy. Sometimes Brennan answered. Sometimes Trent did. Sometimes Raymond called another veteran who needed him first. At noon, the names on the cedar floats were read. Water murmured through the safe channel. Leonard stood with one hand on his cane. Noble sat between him and Brennan in the rust-red warming coat. Trent pulled the bell rope. Its bronze note traveled across the snow. It was not grand enough to echo through mountains. It simply reached the people who were present. Halfway through the names, Noble removed a glove from Walter's chair. Not today, Walter said. We discussed property law. Noble carried it toward the coffee bin. Inventory, Leonard explained. He inventoried me last week. Quality assurance is continuous. Walter traded a piece of waffle for the glove. Dignity survived with difficulty. Brennan stepped onto the porch. Across the lake, Pine Point remained visible, but only old stones marked where the boathouse had stood. He no longer needed to return there to prove he remembered. The memory had moved into roof beams, cedar floats, bad jokes, shared coffee, and a phone answered before silence became permanent. Noble joined him and leaned against his leg. The shepherd heard Leonard call from inside and turned first toward the wrong side. Then he corrected himself and trotted through the door. Brennan smiled. None of them had erased the past. Leonard still carried responsibility for the report. Raymond still missed Louise. Noble's hearing had not changed. Brennan still remembered the phone ringing in the dark. Healing had not removed the facts. It had changed what they did next. Inside, Raymond waved Brennan toward the coffee. Leonard complained about a new form. Noble settled between both men's boots, keeping them within sight. Outside, Lake Bemidji moved beneath its new skin of ice. No one crossed it. No one needed to. The bronze bell stirred softly in the wind, and this time there were people on the shore who had learned to listen. Sometimes healing does not mean forgetting the call we failed to answer. It means finding the courage to answer the next one. Brennan could not change his final night with his father. Leonard could not make his incomplete report honest after the fact, and Raymond could not bring Louise home. Yet grace gave each of them another person to hear, another truth to speak, and another morning in which love could become action. God's mercy often arrives without thunder. It may sound like a tired voice saying, I do not want to bother anyone. It may look like a faithful dog resting between two stubborn men, or a friend bringing coffee while still angry. We do not need to be perfect to become useful again. We need humility, truth, and the willingness to stay when someone calls. If this story touched your heart, comment Amen, and tell us about someone whose call you are grateful you answered. Share this story with a friend or family member who may need hope today, and subscribe for more stories of loyalty, faith, and second chances. May God bring peace to what you cannot change, and give you courage for the love that still needs you.